It had been a year since my husband passed when disturbing things started happening in my home. I was living on my own and had never thought about moving on at the time. I still had fond memories of him, and I guess I never took the time to truly come to terms with it all. He was a good man for the most part, and I was really happy with him during our relationship. The only thing that was an issue was that he was adamant that we would tidy before we go to bed. My husband loathed waking up to a messy house, so we would both make sure to have everything clean and tidy and in its place. It was almost like it was our little shared chore together. It only ever happened one time when we were together, but I never want to experience that again. I had accidentally left some dishes out on the draining board after he'd gone to bed the previous night. It was like he turned into a demon, possessed by uncontrollable rage. The dishes were flung and smashed, and I ended up locking myself in the bathroom. After he calmed down, he tried to tell me he didn't mean to behave like that, and that waking up to an untidy home causes him mental anguish that causes him to react badly to any mess. Of course, we worked through it all eventually, and I felt sorry for him dealing with this problem in a way. It was something he couldn't grasp. We tried therapy together to see if it could help, but I don't think it ever really did him any good. It was a mystery that we just left unsolved. Since he passed, I didn't think there was any need for keeping to that routine anymore. However, when I left a mess, even just a fork or a cup, strange things started happening. It was subtle at first, and then it escalated. It was noticeable that things were getting worse. I came home from a friend's birthday party one night. I had a great time catching up with the girls, which wasn't very often. They were an amazing bunch of friends, and we put on a great party for Lily. I ended up ordering a pizza as I was pretty drunk, starving, and too tired to cook. I left the box out on the table as I stumbled up to bed. I got into bed and tucked myself in. After a few minutes had passed, I heard a knock at the front door. I didn't want to get out of bed at this time and was wary of who it could be. The knocking persisted, so I got myself up and walked downstairs towards the door. In my drunken haze, I opened it. There was no one there. I went back up to bed a little startled and sobered. Then, before entering my room, a loud noise made me jump. 2 loud, fast bangs slammed on my front door. I rushed downstairs and looked out the porch window, but again, there was no one there. "Who's banging out there?" I shouted from the porch. Silence. As I came back in, I realized the pizza box had been moved. That was strange, I thought. I don't remember putting that on the floor. I walked through to the kitchen and placed it in the trash. Maybe I accidentally knocked it off. I went back upstairs and rested for work in the morning. The next day I was feeling pretty annoyed after work. They had just declined me a promotion I was working hard for. My friends were messaging me about it all day, but I never replied out of embarrassment, and the hangover didn't help. I got home and ran a bath to relax before settling down for the night. I was looking forward to watching a movie on the couch and snacking on something after the day I'd just had. I was exhausted. While watching TV downstairs and eating my way through my favourite snacks, I started to feel a bit better. But after a few moments of watching my programme, the TV suddenly started to flicker before turning off. I rolled my eyes at the thought of getting up and turning it back on. I got up and went over to the TV and turned it back on. Out of nowhere, the room went dark. I stood statue still, a bit shook up. The electrics must have tripped. I stumbled through, knocking my shins and ankles off seemingly every bit of furniture I own, opened the electricity box next to my front door and flicked the switch. The power came back on and I went back into the living room. As I opened the living room door, I gasped and stood in shock. My TV had been turned against the wall. I stood there looking at it, completely bewildered. What the hell is going on? I walked back over to the TV slowly and turned it back around. The wires had been completely disconnected. Without thinking, I started reconnecting them and placed the TV back into its original position. As I stepped back from the blank screen, I felt something strange which made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. It was like someone lightly breathing on my skin. My eyes shot open as I could feel a cold presence surround me. I looked down at the TV. The screen's reflection revealed a man standing behind me who looked just like my husband. I gasped in horror and turned around quickly with my hands covering my mouth. No one was there. My eyes darted around the room as I held my breath tightly. I turned back to the TV screen to see the couch and table in its reflection. Scared out of my mind, I spoke out anxiously. "Harry?" Silence. I slowly walked through to the kitchen in shock. I placed the cup and snack packets on the counter. I looked down and saw a receipt that had fallen out of my pocket a day or so ago. I picked it up and put it in the trash out of instinct, along with the empty packets. Then something just took over me. I started cleaning the dishes hurriedly and putting them away. Has he come back? I thought. Or is this just the way I process grief? Only time would tell. About 3 weeks later, I ended up not sleeping too well before going to work. This was becoming an issue for me these last few weeks. The strange occurrences were playing on my mind, and I kept getting broken sleep from the bangs about the house and what sounded like someone walking around in the attic. I tried to block it all out. The night terrors were becoming a more regular occurrence too. I never really experienced these before until recently. One in particular scared me to death when I envisioned my husband floating above me as I slept. His ghostly white face stared at me with black eyeless sockets and a wide toothless grin. When I eventually woke up, I was panting and sweating from the vision. Luckily, this only ever happened once, but it scared me senseless. After a foggy day at work, all I could think about was what I was going to have for dinner that night. I had not eaten anything all day. I rushed to the station and jumped on the train home. I ordered a hefty load of Chinese food in hopes it would arrive soon after I got in. I was absolutely starving. After I got through the front door, I glanced up the hallway towards the glass door which led into my living room. I felt happy to be back and that I'd be tucking into some food soon, but my mind was constantly alert and unsettled at home after the strange stuff that had been happening. I chucked my shoes onto the shoe rack. That's when I picked up movement in the corner of my eye. It seemed like a faint, shadowy figure looming behind the glass door. But as I turned my head to see, it moved away from the glass, slowly. I went up to the door, heart thudding in my chest, turned the handle, and opened it slowly. I was absolutely terrified. I began taking my time looking around the house. I was drained from the constant sleepless nights and horrifying visions of my husband. I wanted him, or whatever it is, to leave me alone. "Harry? Are you here?" I shouted out. There was no reply. I kept walking through the house, opening every door and peering my head through gradually. There was nothing to be seen. I was getting more and more frightened as the sense of something dark and dreadful strongly entered my mind. Suddenly, I heard footsteps coming from my bedroom, which was above me. I began looking up at the ceiling and following the muffled thuds which were purposeful and sharp to the ear. I carefully made my way up the stairs and called out once again. The footsteps were still thudding strongly and started to really disturb me. "Harry?" I cried out. "Harry, is that you up there?" Tears started running down my cheeks as I got up to the top of the stairs. I was too frightened to open the bedroom door that was right in front of me. I stood there, frozen, listening to the thuds which became sharper and louder. Claw-like muffled scrapes screeched down the wood on the other side. I began to tighten my eyes, barely keeping them open. A sudden silence filled the air with a questionable sense of peacefulness. My eyes looked towards the metal door handle, and before I began to reach for it, it started moving on its own. The door opened slowly as I stood back with my hands over my mouth in terror and confusion. I stood there on the landing with my hands gripping my mouth tightly as the wooden creaks stabbed my ears, my eyes transfixed on the door. The silence was unholy and poisoning to the human psyche. The bad energy in the air whispered haunting and fearful names which could never be heard, but only felt by the human flesh. The walls stood tainted with a still, cold terror that ruptured any form of equilibrium, all troubled by the presence which stirred within the foundations. I felt a soft, cold breath from behind me which gently blew my hair. Before I could pick up the courage to turn around, I let out a blood-curdling scream and rushed down the stairs. I reached the bottom and turned around to look up at the empty landing staring down at me with its malignant emptiness. There was a knock at the door which nearly gave me a heart attack. It was the dinner I had ordered from the Chinese restaurant. I turned on my TV after laying down with the bags of food on the table and tried to enjoy my dinner. I mean, what else could I do? I grabbed a plate and fork and sat down, hands still shaking from the encounter, heart still thudding. I just wanted to forget what happened and bury my head in the sand. I needed to eat. I felt faint with hunger. The bangs at my front door woke me from the couch. 6 hours had passed. I must have fallen asleep sitting up. I looked at the clock. The time was 2:34 in the morning. I went to the door and looked out from the porch, but no one was there. Dazed and tired, I went back into the living room. I looked at the clock again, and with dread in my heart, I decided to go up to bed. Not long after tucking myself in, I woke up in need of the bathroom. The air in the room was cold. I threw the sheets off and made my way towards the door. As I made my way down the hallway to the bathroom, I started to feel like I was being watched. As I entered, a hateful and dominating message tore into my vision. The words "you forgot" were smeared on the bathroom mirror in red lipstick. I let out a shrill scream and ran back into my room and slammed the door in complete shock, desperately trying to calm my nerves. I put my ear against the bedroom door to hear what was happening on the other side, but I heard nothing. Luckily, I had my phone on hand. I felt at this point I had no choice but to seek help. I rang the police and told them I had an intruder and a possible stalker in my house. They informed me they were on their way. I waited in stone-cold silence until I could hear knocking at the front door. To the left of the bedroom door there was a wardrobe mirror. As I looked into it, I noticed the street lights behind the curtain revealed a looming shadow of a man, watching me from the corner of the room. I dared not look. I opened the door and backed out slowly, making my way downstairs, petrified. When the police arrived, they inspected the house, but by the time they saw where the message had been written in lipstick, it had been wiped off. "There's no one here, and there's nothing to worry about," one officer said. I was starting to fear for my life now, as they weren't able to help me. "My house is fucking haunted," I shouted. One officer looked at me frowning. You think I'm nuts? Sure, whatever. It's my husband. He's haunting me. I'm scared and I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. An officer took me to one side. Listen, you know there's not much we can do about anything like that. But I will say, when I used to experience a few strange things, I ignored it, and it went away. If it gets worse, go and seek help at St. Helen's Church down the road. Thank you. I will do that, I guess. Sorry for swearing at you guys. We're used to it. Comes with the job. Good night, madam. The front door closed and once again the fear set back in. I was still home alone with him lingering around somewhere. Just ignore it, I thought. But easier said than done. I stayed in my bedroom after the police had left with a chair jammed under the door handle. Like that'll help, I muttered. But it gave me a faint sense of control and comfort. My head kept alternating between the door and the floor, listening for any noise outside the room. About half an hour later, I heard shuffling downstairs, like someone slowly walking around. Well, so much for the policeman's advice, I thought. I thought to myself I had nothing to lose. I wanted to know what he wanted from me and what it was that I had done wrong. I took a deep breath and opened my bedroom door before stepping out into the gloomy hallway. "Hello, Harry," I muttered quietly. I froze in acute panic as a croaky voice from the darkness echoed up towards me. I said nothing and waited. After a minute or so, I asked again. "Harry, is that you?" "Forgot what?" I said back. He didn't reply. I realized that this did not sound like the Harry I knew. It just kept saying the same thing over and over. I needed the bathroom desperately and carefully made my way towards the door. I felt a little calmer after making contact, that maybe I could possibly reason with him, that's if it wouldn't keep repeating itself. I walked in and closed the door before using the bathroom, making sure that the door was securely locked. As I washed my hands, I distantly heard that my bedroom door had closed on its own. I walked back out into the hallway. Suddenly, I heard another knock at the front door as I made my way back towards the stairs. I started shaking again. When I looked down the stairs, I saw the shadow of a man standing at the bottom amongst the darkness. It looked distorted and eerily inhuman from its shadowy outline. It was looking up at me, vicious eyes glaring out of the darkness. "Harry, if that's you in there, just tell me what I need to do. I'm terrified and you're scaring me." The ugly warped voice made my skin crawl, and I was uncontrollably shaking with wide eyes transfixed and flooded with fear. It dawned on me that this wasn't Harry, just something using his body, his essence, as a vessel. I ran back to the bathroom and gathered my thoughts. Forgot what? I searched my scattered mind for the answer. It must have been something I had left out. Something I hadn't put away. He went crazy when this stuff happened. Was that thing even him? It was him, but it wasn't. I was so confused. I waited for 2 hours, opened the door, and turned the top and bottom hallway lights on and made my way downstairs. I soon realized it was something I had left out on the table. A fork that I had forgotten to wash up. Only a fork. I took it, washed it, and put it back in the drawer. I took the rest of the night to scrub the place down until everything was spotless. I thought I'd better call at work tomorrow and take the day off or I'd end up falling asleep at my desk. I made it a priority to visit the church hoping upon hope that someone could help me. They were nice and all, but they treated me like I was delusional. Not overtly, but you could tell they thought it. They said that I was in need of spiritual reform, that the problem was me, not the thing I was dealing with, that I'd obviously conjured it up in my own mind due to grief. I left empty-handed and downhearted. Even though I wouldn't see it, him, while the house was tidy, I couldn't bear living in fear like this any longer. 2 years have passed now, and there has been no sign of it returning. Every spare moment I get, I am constantly tidying and scrubbing vigorously out of sheer fear, eating carefully without dropping a crumb, dusting every inch of my home on a daily basis. I couldn't bear a repeat of that night. The infectious cycle stayed very much alive, transferred from his mind into mine. Who knows? Maybe one day it'll change, and I can finally move on. I live in hope.